Hey friends, Mr. Kern here. I got this sweet vanity that I built. It's all finished, like as far as spraying finish, that sort of thing. And I'm gonna put it together. And I thought, boy, that'd be useful. So put the drawer slides in, put the drawers in, put the drawer fronts on, put the doors on. Then this is where the two sinks are. They're just gonna have a fake drawer front, so I'll put those on. So watch and learn, my friends. The first thing I do, there's a lot of different ways to do the drawer slides, and the way I did this is this panel on this side is actually flush. This one's real close, and so I just have some spacers. They're just drywall shims, but if I put those two in there, that's going to end up flush. So I don't need any of those strips of wood or anything to build that out. I'll just stick those in. But I need to get some sort of a level surface for my drawer slide to sit on while I attach it. So I just measure from the bottom to my face frame, and then I normally just try and make it one little hair higher than that, because if it's too low, obviously the drawer slide is going to tip down. But if I go a hair higher, then I know that it's going to be level all the way front to back. So I've already measured those and cut them, and I've got this tall one. I'm going to start on the top and work my way down. So I've got this tall one that's going to go in here. And my drawer slide's just going to sit on that temporarily while I get it screwed in. So let me grab my drawer slides. I'm using these soft close drawer slides. So they do have a left and a right. So this would be the right, yeah. So that'll just sit on my plywood, and then there's a certain amount they're supposed to stick back. I believe it's 5/32, okay, which would be just a hair over an eighth. So that's going to sit back 5/32. What I normally do is I just get a combination square, and I set that back. I just set that to the depth that I want so I can get them all the same. I'm going to get a screw ready, and I've got a self-centering pre-drill bit, and I should be good to go now. So I'll just set this drawer slide on my spacer plywood piece, take my little my combination square to get my setback correct, hang on to it, and then I'm going to put the first screw right into the face frame. So I'm going to drill one right into the face frame, put my first screw in, and then I'm going to go ahead and put my spacers in. So I need two more holes. So I'll go one in the middle, and then I'll go one on the back. And I'll just pre-drill those and put those screws in. Okay, once I've got one side done, just take my spacer plywood, slide it over to the other side, and then repeat the process. Okay, this side actually fits really flush. The inside panel fits really flush with my face frame, so I don't need spacers on this one. So I can just screw this one in. Okay, so that's one down. Okay, I've got my next one cut for my second drawer slide, and then once I have that one on, I've got a little bit of a lip here at the bottom, and so I just cut a strip of 1/4-inch plywood that'll sit. It'll be a little bit above the bottom face frame, but it'll be fine. So I'll set that on there, pre-drill that, move it over to the other side, and that'll be done. Okay. Okay, all the drawer slides are in. One thing I didn't mention is when you're using a self-centering drill bit, sometimes they want to break, and the key to not break them is to just gun it, go all the way in, all the way out. Don't stop. When you stop, sometimes that's when they break, is if you try and go in and then stop for some reason. So we want to turn it on. We're going to push it in. It's just got a spring-loaded thing. So we're going to push it in and pull it out. And then they're less likely to break if you do that. Sometimes it's hard when you're reaching in here to go in straight, because I think sometimes if you move it a little bit this way, that's what's going to cause them to break, but especially if you stop. Okay, so the drawers are ready to go in there. I've got a notch that I cut out before we finished them that rides on this drawer slide, and then it's got a little hole in it. The drawer slide has a little tab or pin or something that sticks out, and that's basically to keep the drawer from tipping. Okay, that goes in that hole, and then your drawer can't tip. But in order for it to lock in, I've got to put the little, release levers on there. So that'll be my next step. To put the release levers on, I want to be working on the front of the drawer. So this is the back. It's got the notches, and then you just have a left and a right, and they basically just slap in the corners. There's two sets of holes. There's one set that drills down, and then there's another set that drills into the front, and I want to use the one that drills into the front. If I drill them down, this only has a 1/4 inch bottom, and so the screws will go through, and that won't be any good. I don't normally pre-drill these. I normally just screw them right in. Okay. Once the drawers are in, it's time to put the drawer fronts on, and I can do that a few different ways. I think for this particular project, it's going to make the most sense to put the door on first. That way this drawer front will match up with the top of the drawer, and this drawer front will match up with the bottom of the drawer. And then whatever space I end up with in the middle is the space I'll use in the middle here. So I think my next step would be to put my doors on. I am going to tell you, I've already pre-drilled my holes for the drawer fronts, and they're really big holes. I think they're 3/8, and the reason why we use such a big hole is that when we go and put our drawer front on, we use a screw with a big washer head, and so that big washer head will allow us to move that quite a bit in the hole in order to get our drawer lined up and perfect, and then we'll put our last two in once we get them perfect. Okay, I've got my doors. I normally look them over and see if there's anything in particular that I want to be a little more hidden. This one has a little bit of a mark on here, so I'm probably going to put that to the bottom. So that's going to make this door. But I'll talk about how to put those on. The first thing we got to do is we got to figure out what hinges we need. These are really big doors. It was kind of an on space, and so it was either going to be a really wide drawer door or two little doors. And I just decided it was going to be more of a pain to open two little doors to get in there than one big door. It's going to be harder to make 4 doors instead of 2 doors. More hinges. So I just decided we'll just do one bigger door, even though it is a pretty wide Normally when a door's wider than it is tall, it doesn't look quite as good. So this is 21 inches. My opening's 20 inches, so that tells me I have a 1/2 inch overlay, most likely. You can also look at the plan. So I'm going to find some hinges with a 1/2 inch overlay. I'm using these Bloom one-piece soft close hinges, and they have written on what the overlay is. So I'm going to set those guys on here. It looks like I've already pre-drilled my holes, which was handy, very handy, but I'm going to show you how to do that as well. I'm going to put the hinges in, and then I need to get a straight edge. Okay, I'll just use this. And I use the straight edge to get these lined up with each other. So if they're lined up with the straight edge and with the straight edge, then I know they're going to be straight across there. Because if they go in at an angle, they're not going to sit tight against the face frame correctly. So I'll double check that, even though I've already pre-drilled them. And then I'd come in and use my same pre-drill, and then I'd go ahead and put the screws in. I got this door with the hinges put on it now. And so now I basically need to figure out where it needs to go this way, up and down. We kind of already determined that we have a 1/2 inch overlay, and so I double checked that, and it is a 1/2 inch overlay all the way around. And so what that means is the door is going to come a 1/2 inch below the face frame and a 1/2 inch above the face frame. So what I did is I measured from, I'll do the bottom, from the bottom edge of the door to this hinge is 3 inches. Well, I want the bottom edge of the door to hang a 1/2 inch below this, and so I cut a spacer to a 1/2 inch shorter than that. So this is 2.5 inches. So I'll take this and set it right there, and then I'll set my hinge on that. And so that should put my hinge 2.5 inches above this, and the door itself, the bottom edge of the door, should be 3 inches below that. So I'm going to set my door on my little spacer that I made, and I'm going to pre-drill the hinge. And then I'm going to put those 2 screws in. This is a little handier with 2 people. One person to hold the door and one person to screw it in. It can be done this way. Got it. Okay. Now these are pretty good hinges. They are soft close. And so if I slam my door, it'll close itself softly. And they're adjustable. So if I need to raise the door, I can loosen those 2 screws I just put in and raise it or lower it. And then if my door is not sitting, I don't know, level, if it's not sitting level, I can adjust that too. So that's what I'm going to check. I'm going to measure over here, and I'm at 7.5. And I'm going to measure over here. I'm at 7.5. It's actually pretty good. Pretty good. But if I do need to adjust that, all I have to do is screw these 2 little screws in or out, and that'll tweak it one way or tweak it the other way. Okay, so I've got that done. I think what I decided to do was I was going to put these 2 drawer fronts on and get them even with the top and the bottom, and then whatever this space is, it will be the space that I use for these. I think that's my plan. So let's talk about putting the drawer fronts on. I'm going to start. There's a lot of different ways to do this. Once again, make sure we can see this. Yeah. Okay. There are a lot of different ways to do this, but the way I'm going to do it for this particular case is I already determined that I want this to be 7.5. So from the top of this drawer front to here, I want to be 7.5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure to the top of the drawer and then subtract 7.5. So when I measure this, I got about 8 7/8. Pretty close to 8 7/8. So then I'm going to subtract 7.5 off that 8 7/8, and so that'll tell me how much higher I need that to be. So 8 7/8, if that was 9, that would be 1.5 inches, right? But it's not 9, it's 8 7/8, so that'd be 1 3/8 inches. So my guess is that I want the top of the drawer front to be 1 3/8 inches above this. So I'm going to grab my drawer front. There it is. All right, we'll put this side up. So I said I was going to measure down 1 3/8 inches. So I'm going to measure down from the top 1 3/8 inches and 1 3/8 inches. And I used mathematics to come to that. Now I'm going to pull my drawer out. So to disconnect the drawer from those slides, I just pull on these little things off those levers there, off that little bracket deal. I'm going to line the top edge of my drawer up with the lines I made 1 3/8 inches down. And then I'm going to center my drawer side to side. That's pretty close. Take a peek with a tape measure here. That's about 3/4. It's a little under 3/4. It's pretty good. Pretty good there. Okay. I put it on backwards. Did you see that? How dumb. That was the back. Try this again. Alright, and so I'm going to use these bigger washer head screws. I need some 1 1/8 washer head screws. There they are. These are a square drive, so I got to find a square drive. There's one. And I know I have 4 holes in these, but I'm only going to do 2 holes for now. That way, if I'm off, I can use the bottom hole to get it closer, and then anyway, it's just going to be easier to try and adjust this if I only have 2 screws in it. Okay, got that. Slip this drawer back in there. Okay, so I'm going to measure this, and I've got 7 9/16 on both of them, so I need to raise that thing up. So I'm just going to loosen those screws just a hair. I happen to have a little square drive screwdriver. It's way easier to use one of these than to be messing around with a drill. I'm going to loosen them a bit so I can move it, and it'll still stay put. It won't just slide around. And then I can tweak this thing a little bit. That's pretty good there. And I got 1 inch. So it's 1 inch space here. So I want a 1 inch space here. So now I'll measure from the face frame to my drawer, and I got 2 1/4. 2 1/4. So I take 2 1/4 minus 1 inch, because that's what I want, and that leaves 1 1/4. So that tells me that bottom drawer front is going to hang down 1 1/4. Okay, so this is the bottom. So this time, instead of measuring from the top down, I'm going to measure from the bottom up 1 1/4. 1 1/4. Okay. So I'm going to measure over here 1 inch. Okay, I'm a little too low, so I got to raise it. How about this one? Quite a bit too low. So I need to come up more, but I've moved that up as high as I can go. So basically what I'm going to have to do is kind of hang on to it and take my screw out and then move my screw down in that same hole, put it back in, and that'll allow me to bring it up more. Then I'll just do that one at a time so I don't have to take it out. And I'm going to make sure that that's lined up. I can also measure. I can measure over here. I got 1 inch. Make sure I got 1 inch over here, which is good. Now let's see what we got. Pretty dang close. This is going to be a 1/2 inch now. And so I want this gap between this one and this one to be a 1/2 inch. So I can, when I get ready to do these side ones, I'll just rip a little strip and set it right on here. So just as an example, I'll just do that real quick. So I'm going to set that on here. And I'm going to make sure this side over here is flush and this side over here is flush. That way I know they all line up. And then I can go ahead and put 2 screws in that. This time I got to use a little bit longer screws because of the blocks I use to attach that. Okay, so that one's done. All right, so that was pretty easy because I have access to the back. There's not a great way to do this that way. I think the simplest thing I could do is just use my spacer and then measure to the drawer, and that be my measurement. So that is about 1 1/8. Okay. So I slip that little baby in there. I'll just measure here, and I've got 1 inch. I'll measure here. So it could come up just a hair, and it could come up a hair. All right, these drawer sides actually have another way you can adjust them. There's a little tab. I don't know if you can see that. There's a little tab here. And so if you push this thing down, that'll actually raise it up on the drawer slide. I normally don't like to adjust it that way. I try and get it as perfect as I can with the actual drawer front mounted to the drawer, and just use that as kind of a last resort, I guess. Once we get the handles put on here, we really can't adjust. I mean, the screw goes all the way through into the drawer, so we can't really adjust it much. So that would be time to use those for the adjustment, but I try and just do the adjustment, you know, on the face or on the drawer front itself.